So yeah, I've already been introduced to you, and you've already heard about the DCC, and I've already mentioned that strapline we have because good research needs good data. So I don't need to spend that much time there on this introductory slide. But what I will mention before I move on to the main subject we're going to talk about is if after you've got all your CaSDaR swag today, or perhaps just if you're allergic to cats, if you're the sort of person who wants a sticker, we have some DCC puffins here as well. That I've distributed some on some of the tables, so you can come and get one from me. But that's enough of the marketing. I'm here today to talk about similar initiatives on data stewardship, mainly in Europe. I'll look a bit further afield as well. And you might ask, well, you know, why am I here even talking about this? And I'm glad, I think the case has already been made. We've already heard from Jenny about activities in Ireland, and I would hope many of you understand why that's relevant to what CaSDaR is trying to do. But I also felt that, you know, CaSDaR is not situated in Royston Vasey, and although you're rightly focused on the UK, I don't think this is purely a local project for local people, and that we don't need the outside world. I think, you know, the horizons are broader. There is stuff happening elsewhere that certainly could be of interest that CaSDaR can build on. But also, I think there are other people who will certainly want to learn from what CaSDaR is doing as well. And therefore, just trying to make sure that we're all aware of what these things are, I think, is important. And our scope, as I mentioned before, is we work globally. And part of the role I see of the DCC is just to be aware of this stuff and to enable that knowledge transfer, sometimes just to put people in touch with each other and say, you two need to talk. And then we can step away and that goes on. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to summarise a bit of what we know. There are certainly going to be some gaps in that. I don't claim that we have complete knowledge. In fact, I imagine Jenny could have done a much better job of doing this. She's far more connected in this than I am. But certainly, if you're aware of gaps, if you're saying, Kevin, you didn't mention this thing, let us know, because we want to add to that knowledge. Before mentioning specific examples, I think it's also important to be aware there's a lot of variety in these things. Most of what I'm going to talk about are national initiatives, not unlike CaSDaR. But some of them have a broader scope. They're cross-border. They bring together multiple nations or broader geographical groups. And some have a slightly narrower scope. They're regional, they're local in some way. We've heard of some, for instance, today that are covering cities, and some, indeed, in a single institution. I picked up an example from Zurich, but we've heard others today in the UK that are institutionally focused. And some even bridge those things, and I'll make that have grown from one into another. I think also when looking at a broader perspective on this, it's also important to be aware that there's a problematic issue with the term data steward itself. It's a very Northern European word. If you're an English speaker, a Dutch speaker, a German speaker, a speaker of a Nordic language, the concept of steward and stewardship is really straightforward. It translates and the meaning is clear. But when that term was being thought about, and we heard earlier on, about 10 years ago, that the concept of data stewardship, even if not data stewards, was in that European report. That discussion was happening mainly between Northern Euro speakers. And you will hear, many speakers of Romance languages will say that term there isn't an equivalent, or there isn't an equivalent that carries all the same connotations with it. And I think we might need to rethink those terms, or at least be aware that there are going to be different terms in different national contexts. So, getting back from the linguistics and back to some of the things I'm going to talk about are definitely things that you would say, oh yeah, that's a data stewardship network. That's the thing that's really like CaSDaR, but in another country. And others they're more loosely connected. They're kind of strands of activity that focus on some of the things that you would expect a data stewardship network to do, but they're part of something that's a broader national body or initiative. Thank you very much. So I'll start with some of those things that really are obvious connotations here. A relatively recent one is in Latvia, simply the Latvian Data Stewardship Initiative. There, Latvia, a relatively small country, therefore they're able to bring together all of the people really involved in doing that, and they're focusing at the moment on building up skills. So in fact, they came across to the UK just a few months ago. We ran a 2-week training event for them and hopefully put them in touch with others as well. And that's very much a cohort of people all starting from the same point, all building up their skills at the same. And therefore, I think that's going to be a different network from some of the others we're seeing, where you've got people coming into this from many different perspectives. In Sweden as well, there's a national network that grew from what was initially something in a single institution, where other people got interested in that, and before you know it, they're running events and other people are turning up and they're saying, let's make this national. But intriguingly also, as well as that national initiative focused in Sweden, there's a transnational Nordic data stewardship network, which as far as I can tell, seems to be run from Iceland, but is, and quite what the interaction there between the Nordic network and the Swedish network, I confess, I'm not aware. I would have said a lot more about SOMRI in Ireland, but we've already heard from Jenny. I think the thing to bear in mind about that is they've got a head start on many of us, and therefore there's a great deal we can pick up from them. And at the other end of the scale, what's going on in Italy, a very nascent network, which it isn't clear yet whether it's going to be simply a data stewardship network. It's tied to this notion of a national competence centre, something that is being encouraged by the Commission in the development of EOSC. And at the moment, they've done some survey work. They've begun to put together a couple of events specifically focused on data stewards, but managed by the Competence Centre. I'll be keeping a watching brief on what is happening there. And that's come out of the Skills4EOSC project, which I'm not clear we had a part in at the DCC. Some other activities that are more loosely connected. In Germany, there's a lot of, well, one, there's huge investment there in national data infrastructure. The NFDI, which you may or may not be aware of, is funding lots of projects, coordinating a lot of things to build up data research infrastructure in Germany. And amongst that is activities focused on the data stewards, but it's not a separate thing in and of itself. And in Poland and in Portugal, again, there are national funding programs focused on research data and research data infrastructure, in which activities both to build up the skills of data stewards and to enable them to network together to do some of the things that we were hearing about that CaSDaR may well be doing in the future is going on. But indeed, a 2-minute angry cat there. The Netherlands, I think, would claim that they were doing this before any of us, but certainly the investment there and the funding of data stewardship posts in universities, I think, was happening at a scale that was ahead of just about any other country in Europe. It's happening there, therefore, at institutional level. It's happening at national level. And there's also this notion of thematical DSCCs, Data Stewardship Competence Centres, I think. And as an aside, they were originally going to be called DCCs, I believe, about data competence centres, until we had a brief word with them about trademarks and things like that. And they did decide to change, which I'm glad to report that was settled amicably. In Australia, I said we'll reach outside Europe just a bit. Something very similar is happening to what is going on in Germany. The equivalent there, the Australian Research Data Commons, ARDC, again, organise occasional events focused on different professional groups in that area. I think nothing as formal, though, as a network with an existence of itself. In Austria recently, we've seen funding a call, in fact, that's just closed, funding data steward roles within universities. I'm expecting to see some kind of network emerging out of that. We've heard also about activities in the Research Data Alliance, the RDA. There's a working group, the Professionalising Data Stewardship Group, indeed, which Jenny has played a key role in. And that's I think, interacted with lots of these other groups. It's drawn on what those other groups are doing, and I think that's a key way to bring all of these together. And also, I think what's important to remember, to be aware of in this context, is that Europe's been funding a lot of activity in this area. Indeed, there's a call here which is focused on data steward skills and training for open science and fair practices. That's going to be putting in 8 million over 3 years into a project to bring that together across Europe. If you haven't come across that before, I'm afraid you've got 45 minutes before that particular call closes. Probably a bit too late to start on that now. But it also enables me to say we are part of at least one of the proposals towards that particular initiative. And whoever is successful in that, there will definitely, one of the things they'll be required to do is to work with national networks like CaSDaR. So expect to have somebody knocking on your door from whoever it is that wins that particular thing. And at that point, I think my time is up, and luckily I've reached the end of my slides as well, so I'll stop. Thanks very much.